1. Welcome back, everybody. Glad to see you all again. Today's podcast is going to be dealing with a very timely subject. And I guess we'll just open with a big question. How much uncertainty can one person take? I think that's a really relevant question, given the state and time that we're living in. There are a lot of subtext to that question. I'm sure you're all experiencing a lot of uncertainty living in today's world. We're fortunate and glad to be joined today by my colleague, my dear friend over the last couple of decades, and my co-founder for Olympic Change Partners, David Burden. David is one of the leading behavioral scientists out there today. He's going to have some great answers for us. And there he is. David, good morning. Let's open with the big question. How much more can we take?
Some days I don't know. And I don't know about you, but do you ever, like, your weekend is going along kind of fine, and then Sunday around 4 or 5 o'clock, you get this weird feeling in your body? Oh. You're like, uh-oh. The weekend's over, and the world's come. So for me, I have these moments where uncertainty is sort of out of my mind. So Saturday, Sunday, I live in Las Vegas, and there's some fun things to do here that I did over the weekend. I went to a new hotel, went to a casino, met some new people. All of that's great fun. But let me tell you, Sunday afternoon, evening, it's like, uh-oh, what's that weird feeling? Like in those old Westerns where you'd see the brambles and that whistling sound before the real menacing guy rolled into town. So how much can we take of that feeling, and also just the nagging feeling that maybe there's another shoe to drop, or, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Or I don't feel like I'm on a firm footing. These are all ways that people say or signal, I'm feeling uncertain.
Well, that feeling is more for me than just mental. I have those train tracks going in my head, David, but this feels physical too.
That's because it is. It's both. But when it starts out, and we say, how much can we take? So let me just start by saying, first of all, uncertainty as a word, as a definition, as a concept, is the sense of not having control. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know what's going to happen this afternoon, tomorrow, next week, or whatever. FYI, and sort of just between you and me, we never really did have any of this, but for some reason it just all seems like a big deal now.
Gosh. But not just for us, it seems like for everybody. Not to date our podcast too much, but we're probably 100 days or so out from an election. Not only don't I know who I'm going to vote for, I don't know who's running. It seems to change from day to day. And we're certainly not going to make this about politics, but mainly about the uncertainty. I just don't remember being in a place like this before.
I think if you're over the age of 35, which I'm slightly over 35, we grew up in a time where there was more definition to what we did. We went to high school. If you were like my family, crazy though they may have been, they didn't really care what you did, but you are going to go to college. We don't really care what courses you take, because we're not that interested in you. That's another webinar.
We're not that interested in you.
We're not that interested in you. So you just go and figure it out. But, we grew up with certain structures. We grew up with certain organizations, institutions that we felt were very permanent.
Shared values.
Some
universally shared values like respect your elders, don't swear in church.
How about going to church, not being disrespectful of people who do if you don't? So all of that is like gone now. So it's very easy to sort of look up and say, I don't recognize the world I'm living in. I don't really recognize the world I'm living in. And that could be okay. I mean, change is all right, but it's important to know what I'm changing from and what I'm changing to. The uncertainty comes in when you know what's leaving you, but you don't know what's going to be replacing it. That's the space that at least 47 million adults find themselves in right now. So just for context, 340 million people in America, 47 million people have raised their hand. And I'm a former hospital administrator, so I can tell you, for there to be a number on the American Psychiatric Association's website that says there's 47 million people who are dealing with anxiety and depression, in order to get that number, that many people in America over the last 6 months had to go somewhere, an emergency room, a psych ER, a therapist's office, a hospital, somewhere where those numbers have to be counted in order for, the hospitals and the clinics and that to deal with their reimbursements or however they're going to get paid.
So
So
this
that's
is
how that.
just the 47 million who raised their hands.
That's
A whole
the
lot
point
of
I'm
us
making.
didn't
Right.
go
Right.
in to do anything, but I assure you, 47 million and number one right here. I feel a lot better about the future if I can at least predict a few things. You try to save up and invest
Well,
for a rainy day. You try to learn the right things. You try to, there are all these things that used to
and
work.
and Nick, there are many people that did save up for a rainy
Yeah.
day. And now, because of changes in the United States, not only in how business is done, but stock market and so many things, the people that did follow the rules, that did save for a rainy day, their rainy day has already occurred.
Well, how do you save up for a tsunami?
Well,
You just can't.
so it's interesting. We don't know what's going to happen next. It's a feeling of not being prepared. Sometimes what I feel is vulnerable. Now, I'm a
Okay.
big believer that if you can give the feelings that you're experiencing a name, that puts you ahead of the curve, as opposed to just having all of these feelings that uncertainty generates in you and not really being able to, I don't know how I'm feeling. Well, you need to really get a handle on that, because if I can say I'm feeling vulnerable, I can do something about that. If I say I'm feeling depressed or I'm feeling anxious, those are things on which I can take action. But if I just say, oh, I don't know what I'm feeling, I just want to avoid the whole thing, you can clearly see if one is option A and one is option B, one leads to action, which leads to sort of creating some certainty.
Right.
And the other door simply allows the uncertainty to continue, because we're not examining anything. We're not questioning anything. We're not saying, okay, well, why are you feeling vulnerable? What led up to this? What were you thinking about? Were you thinking about money? Because if that's the case, we can't manufacture it, but we can sit down with a pad and paper and start figuring it out. We can certainly call people that are very good with money, like my good friend Nick, and say, look, I'm having some issues over here. Can you help me think through this problem? There's power in that. And that's how you sort of put the power back in you that uncertainty takes away. Because if we just let it go, not only are there mental impacts, because mentally, your ability to think is going to be impacted. Your blood flow is going to be ultimately impacted, because and often when people are anxious or stressed, they feel it in their stomach first. And there's a reason for that. Blood flow shifts. The body says, oh, you don't really need to be digesting anything right now. So the blood that is down there, we can shift that someplace else. So, there's changes in your body, changes in your sleeping habits, but mostly cognitive changes.
And that's the toughest one, I think, to deal with. We had talked about, I always called it analysis paralysis or information overload, but you came up with a different word. You called it decision fatigue. And I did a little bit of homework.
It is decision fatigue.
I think you notice I've got a wardrobe full of clothes, but I cycle through the same 4 black sweaters simply so I don't have to make one more choice today. I don't have to decide one more thing. I wake up and I know it's going to be the black sweater.
But here's the decision fatigue, overwhelm. The words themselves, they don't really sound like the they don't seem to denote the impact that they have. Because for me, if I'm overwhelmed, if I don't recognize it and say, okay, like today, I woke up, I was overwhelmed. And I'm like, okay, well, David, it feels like you're headed in the direction of being overwhelmed. What are just some of the things that have contributed to that? Oh, well, there's this, there's that, there's this, there's the other thing, there's this. There could be 10, 20 things. So now you've got something to work with. Now you've got the culprit for the overwhelm. Because if there are people, and our great Aunt Miriam, all the stuff, great Aunt Miriam would just roll over, put her computer under the covers, and watch YouTube videos all day. And I know we're highlighting Aunt Miriam, but the reality is, I suspect she's not alone.
No, everybody in the Huygens family line is a little bit troubled, but certainly no one more than Aunt Miriam, who
and so
whose name has been changed to protect the.
We changed the names to protect the guilty.
The guilty, yes.
Yeah, so there's that sort of mindset. The other thing that uncertainty does is it begins to change our behavior. It changes how we behave. It might make us, I don't know, not only indecisive, it might make us fearful.
Yeah.
And, have you ever been out to dinner with somebody who's got fears inside them that they haven't addressed? They're not great dinner companions.
No.
They tend to, if there's one story that's like positive, they can find something negative in that.
Some people just travel with a dark cloud hanging over them because that's the only way they can perceive and interact, and that's a tough space to be in. I think
it is a very
does that.
It's a tough space to be in. I would say that I feel kind of weird saying it this way, but I almost want to say that is a voluntary position. Because I don't have to be in that position. There's a lot of other choices I can make. I can examine it. Uncertainty. How many times have we been in a space? And I told you, I'm like, 50 million years old? There have been a zillion occasions where I have stood in my living room. And when I lived in California, I lived in LA and had really headed up to here living there. And I was the administrator of a large public hospital. Try that on for a stress test. And I just remember saying to myself, I don't know what is coming after this, but all this is over.
Yeah. Yes. And you reached that point where you were able to get clarity. And in that moment of clarity, you said, I'm taking back my power.
Yeah.
This chapter is done.
Because
and you did a geo.
Anyone can do that. And even if you, as a child, you had parents like mine, that never provided me with any emotional support, or you came from a family like mine that looked great in pictures, but did everything they could possibly do to derail any self-confidence that I have. Because look, many of us got messages from the time we were little children that we were never going to amount to anything. You'll never be like your cousin so-and-so, or you'll never be like your Aunt Sheila, or whatever it may have been. Maybe not everybody got those messages, but I would suspect probably about 40 million people in this country got those messages. So, even if you come from a beginning that made overwhelm a natural progression, that made anxiety a natural progression, that made negative self-talk a natural progression, and all of that, means that when circumstances change and you feel vulnerable, you're going to start hearing those messages again. You see, you knew that you would never amount to anything.
Oh,
you see,
told you so.
I told you so's, and people we do have those. We do get those voices. So I think it's important to take stock. It's important to not believe those messages. And when you're dealing with uncertainty, here's the thing. What kinds of uncertainty are we dealing with? Is it personal uncertainty? Is it global uncertainty? Is it situational? Explore it. So here's another tip. If you're feeling uncertain, ask yourself, where is this coming from? Is it because of the political environment, the state of the nation? Is it my own health, where I live? Is it money? Is it just, am I going to get that job or not? Is this going to, because how you are able to reorganize your thinking to make yourself stronger and stand up a little better during periods of uncertainty, it's going to be pretty critical to understand what kind of uncertainty you're dealing with. Know what you're dealing with.
Well, what are steps we can take to know what we're dealing with?
Oh my goodness.
Do we have any helpful quizzes, tips, self-evaluation?
We do.
The
first thing is, and I always mention this, is about understanding where you stand with these issues right now. And of course, that means assessment. Assessing yourself to understand how you deal with change, assessing yourself on where your level of resilience is, assessing yourself on your level of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So you have to know what you're dealing with. Where are you starting from? Now, how much uncertainty people can take. Some people, and I know them, they just bebop and scat along like nothing's happening.
Bubble people, I call them. They just float along. Nothing bothers them.
I've got a friend.
Always work out.
Yeah, I've got a friend, and I just say, you must just be perfect, because I'm swearing to God, I just don't ever, you never seem to have any reaction to any of this. So one of the first things you have to sort of think about is, what habits do I have? What habits do I have include making the bed? Do I have some sort of ritual that I engage in when I awake in the morning? Do I put myself on a schedule? Am I filling my day with activities that will ultimately make me feel like I've achieved something at the end of the day? Because achievement not only is a good antidote for anxiety, but achievement begins to make you feel like, I don't know what's going on out there, but in here, I know what's going on.
Yes.
Right? So
you control your environment, even if it's as simple as, I am making my bed today.
Control
and it's going to look organized. And those pillows are going to be where I want them to be there. I've done one thing. I mean, that first 5-minute rule that
making your bed could be the first win of the day.
First win of my day is getting out of it, getting out of the bed.
Which
sometimes can be an effort.
There's a singer people probably don't know anymore, Dame Shirley Bassey. And, she's probably one of the longest living singers I've ever been aware of. She's about 87, still tours.
Indomitable. Yeah. For those of you joining for the first time, let me tell you, David Burden is the biggest fan of Shirley Bassey.
Oh, you don't even want to know.
Fans, and she is a discovery and a treasure. That I think she belongs to the world. If we were having a national treasure or a global treasure, she'd be definitely on the list.
She, about 10 years ago, so she was about 77, she was creating a new album to be released, and all the songs were different. Everything was different. The mechanism for doing the thing was different. And she was so accustomed to being in her evening gown and having a big orchestra, and this was not that.
Oh.
And she was with like the Bleeding Deacons and the Pet Shop Boys. And
Pet Shop Boys. Interesting.
I know. So at the end of it, she did the whole album in one take ultimately. And then at the end, she said to everybody, she said, you know what? She says, I don't know who that was that came in here a few hours ago, but Dame Shirley is here now.
Dame Shirley is here now. And
so
sometimes it's Nick is here now or David is here now. When we feel ourselves kind of come together and we get that moment where we know who we are and what we're able to do. And suddenly everything settles a little bit, doesn't it?
So you asked about some tips or steps. So assessing where you stand on change, because one of the things that is really important for uncertainty is adaptability. We're all doing things now that we may not have had to do 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, depending on,
Oh, yeah.
who you are. So take an assessment that we have available that not only helps you understand where you are in the scheme of change, adaptability, but also what you can do about it
Hmm.
if you score lower than you would like. Also, resilience, the ability to bounce forward, is so critical. And bouncing forward means letting the past go. It means when you're having a conversation today, let it be about today. Don't compare it to yesterday. You know, when you, and I'm going to regret saying this, but
Oh, I'm
there's a
listening close.
there's an old phrase that I heard. I've been in AA for about 40 years, and I remember when I first joined, the topic was change and letting go and moving forward and bouncing forward, all of that. And this guy, he was like in his late 60s, and he had been sober for like ever. And he says, just remember, children, he says, when you have a foot in tomorrow and a foot in yesterday, you shit all over today.
Oh God!
I never forgot.
It's true.
I never forgot that, because uncertainty has us projecting into tomorrow, which we don't know what's going to happen.
Oh yeah, we're trying to figure out what hasn't happened and what might never will.
And some call that future casting.
Future casting.
And then keeping a foot in yesterday, which you can't change. So when I think of that image that promotes, I think about where is your power? Your power isn't tomorrow. Your power isn't yesterday. Your power is right now. So again, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? Where is your vision? What would you like to see happen? Where is your resilience? How adaptable to change am I? Did I get enough sleep? Am I getting any exercise? Did I drink enough water? Did I let my great Aunt Miriam, who never married, call me up and fill my head with a bunch of negative crap and how awful the world is? And wait till you see what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't need this in my life.
It almost becomes a gleeful celebration of the anticipation of doom. Mm-hmm. It starts to be a self-fulfilling prophecy with Miriam. I've been on the phone with her, and she's always manifesting a destiny of doom. Mm-hmm. It's always going to be worse than it's going to be.
And so avoid the people that carry that message, as a tip, and take it as a standing recommendation. One of the other things that I encourage, and I chuckle when I think of this, but I think about risk taking. Because I'm not normally a risk taker. Look, I'm a Midwesterner. In my core, I am a Midwesterner, born, reared, and educated in Michigan. And so we're not known for risk taking in the Midwest, I don't believe. And so, but today, if I'm speaking somewhere and people say, I'd like for you to come to our meeting, there might be some, collaboration that could be helpful. I'm more inclined to follow that, and say, why not? Mm-hmm. Saying yes more often is my version of risk taking, because you never know where that may lead you. Also, we call it social support.
Our network.
You can call it different things, but it is important to sort of have something that, this is a very corny thing to say, but it's important to have something that refills your glass, because these days are taking it out of us.
I like that concept, refilling your spiritual, emotional, or your wellness glass. Well, David, in our last 5 minutes, do you want to remind us of what our next? You're big. Everybody, look out. David is big on action plans and action steps. He means it. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that, or take us wherever you want to in our last 5 minutes?
Yeah, I want to encourage everybody, and let me tell you, I just want to say, I'm aware that people are struggling. I am very aware of that. I coach people, and, in a perfect world, people wouldn't need coaching now, would they? So
Yeah.
I'm very aware of that. I also work with a lot of mental health organizations and donate my time to survivors of suicide, the whole suicide prevention group. I'm part of that. I have a very clear understanding of what is happening with this 47 million people in America. I know that story very well.
Yeah.
And so that's actually one of the reasons why Olympic Change Partners is here, because we want to be like a corner of your world where you can come and you can hear two guys talking about their own struggles and challenges and what they've done to, prop themselves up and keep going. Because that's the thing, you just keep going. So I'd like for you to take a look at our website. If you would like to have a coaching session or discovery session with us, there's certainly an opportunity to do that. There are numbers and numbers of free assessments that you can download and take that will empower you. Nick mentioned about action planning. I'm a big believer in action planning. What are the goals? What tasks are you going to need to take in order to reach those? What vision is this going to be taking you to? In other words, what's going to be different in your life when these goals are met? Who should you be success partners with? Is it going to be your great Aunt Miriam that never married and who's very dismal and bleak all the time? Or is it going to be somebody you call up and say, oh, I've got this terrible problem. And the friend says, oh, tell me all about it. And they say, oh, well, that does sound terrible, but I have an idea.
I have an idea.
Those are the folks you want to be around, making your bed every day. So going to the website, there's a lot. I have actually a downloadable worksheet with 10 steps on how to just launch your day in a productive and calm manner.
10 steps to launch your day using those critical 5 minutes that you tell us, those 5 fantastic minutes that when we wake up belong just to us.
And that 5 minutes in the morning, because, of course, I'm repeating myself, but it's worth repeating. Those in the morning and in the evening, upon waking and upon going to sleep, your brain is never more receptive than in those moments. So think about when you're falling asleep. Are you watching the news? Is the television on? Is somebody yelling at you? What's going into your head as you're falling asleep? Because that's going to have an impact on your sleep. It's going to also have an impact when you wake. It's not uncommon for people that are dealing with uncertainty and anxiety. When they wake, as soon as their eyes open, they are already in full anxiety mode.
Oh, gosh. Well, we're going to have to do a podcast in the very near future that maybe 2 of them. One that focuses on those first fantastic magic minutes every morning, what we can do. Patting myself on the back. I had an accomplishment this morning. David, thank you for reframing that for me. I made my bed. And
we have a podcast coming up where we're going to talk about power habits.
Power habits.
Yeah.
That one sounds great.
Power habits and routine. So there's all of this, including all of the podcasts themselves and a podcast guide. All of that is on the website too. So, this is a great place to just sort of check in and, hear what, 2 folks who are not unlike you, are doing to keep themselves off the roof of their house. By the way, how many times
I'm on the roof?
Nick will call and he'll say, how are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm only on the balcony. I'm not on the roof. Well,
and that is true today. I really am on the balcony, as you can see from behind me, but I'm not on the roof today. Well, David, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to our very next podcast. And before we go, I just want to remind people the website's on the bottom. David has put up the nice red banner. You can go there to find out more about us. You can find out about other podcasts and listen to them or watch them right in the moment. You're also going to be able to, we haven't announced it yet, stay in touch with us. We're going to be announcing a live webinar where probably run a couple of hours. You can dive in and you can meet us and you can talk to us and interact with us right in the moment. Right. So we're both looking forward to that. Okay, I'm a little
Very.
nervous, but I'm
Oh,
not
don't
gonna
be
not gonna
nervous.
deal with
Don't
that
be
anxiety
nervous.
yet, David. You'll have to coach me.
All right, no problem, no problem. Well, have an empowered day, everybody, and push back on those feelings of uncertainty. I know I
Push
do.
back.
I have to do it sometimes, some days more times than other days, but push it back, challenge it. Don't
Well,
let
it's
it
early
over.
in my week. I'll be a wreck by later on in the week. So you'll see the collapse as we get
Oh,
closer to Friday.
that
But
is
hey,
so doubtful. That is so doubtful. But
my
thank you,
goal in life,
everybody.
David, has been to serve as a warning to others, and I am your
A
poster boy.
cautionary tale, right?
Caution to everyone. Thank you all for
All
joining us
right,
today.
everybody.
We'll
Thank
see you on
you.
our next
We'll talk
podcast.
to you soon.
Bye bye.